Oh, there's one. Yes! Fish on!
Dropshotting is a popular and relatively easy technique for catching predatory species like perch. Today's video will help you get started with your drop shot fishing.
I've actually come to the tackle shop today before we head down the river because I needed a few bits of kit. And I had to get myself a new drop shot rod because my other one broke the other day because I walked into a tree, so don't do that. The rod that I've chosen is a perfect all-round drop shotting rod. The length that you need to look for is something between about 6 and 8 feet long. And the important thing, it wants to be very light. You want to be able to hold it in your hand all day and not get tired or strain your muscles. The other thing is you want to look for a rod with a casting weight of around 0 to 15 grams. This one is a 1 to 9 gram casting weight, which means it's very soft action, very delicate. Heavier rods of upwards of 20 gram casting weight, you probably won't be able to feel the bite through the rod tip. So a rod like this is perfect. You can tell this is a dedicated drop shot rod because at the end of it, there's a little white mark. And sometimes, especially when it's starting to get dark, watching that white dot on the end of the rod helps you spot bites. When the light's fading. On this, I've got a small reel. I found this on the counter over there. I think it was about £20. So this rod and reel combo, you're looking at under 60 quid, which is pretty good for a starter drop shot setup. As well as this, you will need a few items of terminal tackle to set up the rig, but compared to carp fishing or pike fishing with floats and stuff like that, you don't need much kit. Some fluorocarbon, that's what you'll tie your trace with. Anything between 4 and 8 pound breaking strain will be perfect. Obviously, you need to find what strength of line is best for you based on how big the fish are, how many snags there are in front of you. Some size 6 drop shot hooks. This seems to be perfect for soft plastic lures, worms. You can use a bigger hook, maybe a size 4 if you're going for slightly bigger fish, using larger baits, but size 6s do good for me. And finally, some drop shot weights. This is what you're going to connect on your line to give you weight to cast and to pull your bait down to the bottom. This reel has already got some braid on it. I'm not actually going to buy this reel because I got one in the van, but the braid is important because if you don't have braid on your reel, you won't feel the bite so much and you won't be able to impart the action into your lure or worm. Braid doesn't stretch, so every time you twitch the rod, the bait twitches as well. With monofilament, like normal fishing line, you twitch the rod, but actually because of the stretch, you're not directly in contact with your bait. Anyway, I'm gonna get these things purchased, apart from the reel, which I'll put back, and we'll head down the river. We've arrived at the first spot of the day and I've got the rod set up. Tying a drop shot rig isn't too difficult, certainly more simple than float or feeder rigs. I've taken a 1.5 to 2 foot length of fluorocarbon, taken that off of the spool and cut that to length, and then mounted my hook. I do this by threading it onto the line, doubling the line over on itself and tying a Palomar knot. Once the Palomar is created, it's worth threading the fluoro back down through the eye and pulling it tight. By threading the line back through the eye of the hook, it kicks the hook out and holds it at the angle you want, ready to hook a fish. With the drop shot, there's multiple different knots that you can do, but the ones that work best are the ones that hold the hook out straight, ready for a fish to get hooked by it. Sometimes you tie a drop shot rig and the hook is sort of sitting to the side or upside down, and you're just going to end up missing a lot of bites that way. Then I've attached the trace material to my braid just by tying a couple of overhand loops and looping them together, but you can also use an Albright knot. There are plenty of how to tie knot videos on the Fishing Tutorials channel if you're not sure about tying those. And finally, I've attached a drop shot weight to the end of the fluorocarbon. You can put this any distance away from the hook, and what it does is that will sit on the bottom and your hook will be up above it. If there's lots of weeds, you might want to have it further away from the weight so your hook stays above the weeds. But if you want to fish close to the bottom, maybe you've spotted fish right down on the deck, then you can put the weight just beneath the hook. I'm going to start off with, I don't know, 8 or 9 inches distance between the weight and the hook. I'm going to make a cast and see what we can find in this first location. Right, I'm going to try this first spot underneath the bridge here. It's very shallow down here. My cameraman is standing out in the middle of the river, getting the best footage ever at the same time as probably scaring off most of the fish. But up here, it seems like it looks a bit deeper. So I'm going to try throwing a worm under there. I'm going to nick a couple of worms onto the hook. You can use, of course, soft plastic lures when you're drop shotting, and that's something that's quite good because it never goes off. You don't have to go to the tackle shop and get more. You can leave them in your car at all times, but I just love using worms, and to start the day off, I just want to get a bite, and worms can be really good for that. Let the weight go all the way down to the bottom, and once it's down there, I'm going to tighten up the line until I can just feel the weight. And this is where having a sensitive rod tip comes into play, because the trick with a drop shot is to actually jiggle the bait very, very gently. So rather than just chucking it out and reeling it straight back in again, I actually prefer to throw it in, let it sink to the bottom, let it sit still for a bit, and then give it some tiny little wiggles before ever so slowly bringing it back towards me. Oh, that's a nibble. Hey! Well, I got something, and it is the target species, a perch. It's a greedy one. I'm not quite sure how that small perch intended on swallowing those 2 big juicy worms, but it's made a good attempt. It's a cute little thing, but it's a good start. Can you see that on your camera over there?
Yeah, it looks beautiful.
Yeah, there you go, perch. Right, let's try and catch that one's grandma. When you're fishing with spinners or traditional lures like paddle tails and soft plastics, you're normally casting in and reeling back, casting in and reeling back, and you're covering a lot of water very quickly. Drop shot fishing isn't really like that. I'd say drop shot is the slow version of lure fishing. It's the delicate, working an area gradually and trying to find those fish, rather than covering lots of water and fishing loads of swims. Drop shot allows you to really search out every little inch of an area. Oh, that was a better hit. I tightened my drag slightly. Okay, I got a bit excited. It's not huge, but that was such a good bite. Ah, it's the cutest little pike I think I've ever seen. I thought that was going to be a decent perch because the bite was so savage. But instead, it's actually a small pike. Can we go? Look at that. The worms were just in the top of its mouth. So when you actually feel a bite and the braid is tight and the rod tip just taps a little bit, just knock, knock, knock. You want to set the hook quite firmly. Perch have got quite bony mouths, so to actually hook the fish, you do need to give it a good solid lift of the rod. I was thinking I was going to get another bite just then, so I could demonstrate. But yeah, I would advise striking reasonably quick because perch can quite easily swallow your bait. Whatever lure or bait you're using, perch can be quite ferocious feeders, and when they want it, they'll take it right down. So as soon as you see that rod tip tap 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 tap, give it a little whip of the rod like that, set the hook, and you should be into a fish. That time though, all I got was a little bit of weed. Nibble. Fish. Oh wow, it's microscopic. It's a perch though. Another one on the Dropshot worm.
I was catching the odd fish, but it was hard work. I believe the low water level and very hot weather was probably to blame for this. I've certainly found the fishing best when the river has a little more flow and slightly more colour to it. This stretch hadn't done many bites, so it was time to head off elsewhere.
Today it has been so hot and the fishing has been really challenging as well. Normally drop shotting for me works really well on slow flowing rivers, canals, and I've also caught a lot of perch from lakes on the drop shot as well. Today though it's been difficult. This is going to be the last spot of the day. This weir pool apparently holds some good perch. It looks really good actually, and I'm hoping this is where I'll be able to get a few bites. Couple of worms on the hook, and we're going to try out on the edge of that flow and then twitch it slowly into the slack water. Oh, there's one. Yes, fish on from the weir pool. It was worth moving up here. Oh, that's a lovely perch, much better than what I was catching before. Although I do have to quickly empty my net. Woo-hoo-hoo, that's a bit better. Now perch are a species that quite likes to swallow your hook. Now this one isn't deep, but a pair of forceps is definitely helpful. And I would advise anyone who's going perch fishing or pike fishing, bring these, definitely, 100% necessary. The worms were getting nibbled quite quickly by smaller fish, and that is when you want to go for something plastic, something that will stay on the hook a bit longer. I'm casting right on the edge of the fast flow, and all I can think is that the fish are shoaled up here because it's the only place in this river right now where there's plenty of oxygen. The churning water is pumping oxygen into the water, and the fish are definitely liking it. When the perch are really fired up and feeding confidently, it's quite good actually when you're really putting a lot of action into the lure, giving it loads of twitches and movements. Other days you do have to fish very slow and creep your bait along the bottom super gently just to try and tempt a bite. Today has been tricky, but it's been all about finding an area where the fish are actually feeding, because the spots we were at before just didn't seem very good. There was a few fish in the shade, in the sort of cooler, shady spots, but most of them that want to feed are in this fast-moving water. That was instant. Oh, that one's nice. That was as soon as it hit the water. I'm back to using the net. Oh, hey. I love fishing. Dee, 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 dee. There we go. That's a cracking little perch. Now some more experienced perch fishermen will say, well, it's still only a baby. Perch get to 5 pounds and this is only a few ounces, but you can't complain. I've really enjoyed today, and despite the very hot and quite testing conditions, the drop shot has come good. You could leave this rod and reel in your car at all times, stumble across a bit of water or be even like carp fishing and think, oh, I might give it a little go for perch. Why not? I've got the gear. And yeah, the drop shot is so easy, so simple. You can catch perch from almost anywhere.